So welcome to the Node.js Next 10 meeting for October 27th, 2021. Before we get started, I guess, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? I'll just say for any collaborators, there is a PR open in the repo, just documenting and capturing our the technical priorities that this group has worked on. So if you can go, check that out, comment, get in the discussion, or approve, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, we can move on to the issues we had tagged for the agenda, which was in issue number 97. So first one was provide pre-built Node.js images or cache 39672. This one, I think, Tierney, you'd looked at a little bit and opened the issue.
Yeah, I looked at it. I have been poking at this for several weeks. Basically, anytime I'm not working on something else, this is what I'm working on. I have a good image. I have a good Docker image that is a dev container that works as a dev container. The challenge right now is getting it small enough so code spaces will launch. I'd prefer not to have to tell people use the bigger code spaces VM. So there's like 4 tiers of VMs. Standard is standard, and that has 32 gigabytes of storage. The Docker image with a warm cache is pretty chunky. It's like 20. It started at 28 or 29. I've gotten it down to 24 gigabytes. I'm basically just poking through and tearing out what I can as I go. If anyone has advice on like, hey, you can delete this 3 gigabyte directory, that'd be great. And progressively, as I tear out more and more, the code spaces environment setup gets further and further along. So I've gotten it significantly further at this point, and I've learned some interesting things. But yeah, I'm poking at it.
Using the smaller code spaces because, is that going to be the one that's free versus other ones which will be paid?
It's the default one. So they're all paid, right? But theoretically, we'd get that comped through. Right. I mean, if you're a Node collaborator, you'd have that comped to some extent. I'm sure there will be a cap, and we'd have to figure that out later.
Yeah.
But I don't want people to have to do the premium one that has it costs a little bit more, but it's more steps. It's not just click. It's more steps in that it's 2 extra clicks. It's also not available yet.
Disk space.
32 gigs of disk space. Yep. And I'm not fully sure on how the infrastructure works and why the 24 gigs is too big, but yeah, it dies.
Do you have I think there's some tools, I know the rel that I run pops up a graphic that says here's where the disk, where all the stuff is used. Have you looked at that? Just curious where all that memory, where all that disk space goes.
That was the point I got. I mean, it's I'm putting it. I'm basically trying to make a warm cache Docker image of building Node. So I'm building Node and then consuming that Node for development theoretically, so that the cache is there and we don't have to rebuild too much every time. If that's a bad idea, if that's not smart, y'all would be the best ones to tell me that. But yeah, I want someone to be able to hit build as soon as they get into the Docker image and have it be fast rather than slow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, good.
I'm just surprised that it takes that much. 32 gig is not so tiny, right?
No, it's not tiny, but there are a few things that might be going on generally. Fdupes might help you. That's finding duplicate files. Also, Docker images, depending upon how they're layered, can explode in size. So
Yeah.
deleting operations still use up that full amount of disk space.
Yep.
I don't know if you
I
looked into that.
I have everything is running on a single run. All of the commands are
Okay.
compressed into that now.
And they're not using a base image that's big, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I cut out 3 gigs by switching to Debian Slim. Yeah, and if people want to tell me use Arch or something or Alpine or whatever the small one is,
Please
just-
don't, because the commands
Yeah.
are different.
Yeah.
exactly. It's using Debian or Ubuntu would be the ideal, and just it's a developer experience machine. It's not like I'm deploying this thing to production for people to consume. So I want a little bit better developer experience.
The reason I'm confused is like I did some tests to say like there are people saying like on Fedora we were running out of memory. So I spun up a virtual machine and I'm just looking at it. And the virtual machine, I only gave the machine 30 gig of memory total, and it tells me that that's how big the file system can grow to, but it tells me the actual size is only 6 gig.
Yeah, so I mean,
I did a full build.
Oh,
Like that's after I did I created that machine to do a full build of Node, and I did a full build of Node. And that's as big as the disk got, was 6 gigs. So that's why I'm confused about the 32 gig part.
yeah, I mean, and also I'm using Ninja, which I don't know if that makes it bigger. Maybe that's a mistake.
This
but
would have
yeah.
just been like I cloned the repo, .configure, make node or make test probably.
Yeah. I configured it with Ninja, which I assumed would be better. Perhaps that is significantly bigger.
Yeah, I've never done that, so I don't know. But I'm just getting that data point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I don't think I'm doing a debug build as well, which I assume is what I should do for dev. Maybe I'm wrong. Which I assume is bigger.
That I could use a bit more space, but I don't think you
Yeah.
need to do a debug build all the time.
Oh, that's great to know then.
Right? Like I rarely do that. I would, the only time I do a debug build is when I actually need to debug through the code, which is more like, hey, I'm running into some problem versus hey, I'm creating some new,
I think that makes it significantly bigger. So
right.
It does.
Yeah.
Also, just note that the JavaScript is still debuggable in a prod build.
Yep.
It's just C++ that isn't.
Right. So I think, it'd be a really good start to just, if we turn off debug and now it now fits in nicely, that would still be a really good starting point for people to come in and, even if you're doing like some small change to add code coverage or whatever, you don't need that. And it would be helpful to just say, go.
Yeah. So I mean, taking off debug, I think should actually probably make it work. So I maybe should have thought about asking someone about that. But yeah, I've made progress. Like it works. Like it does what it should do. So if that makes it starting get code spaces on the standard image, which the other thing about the standard image is that's what's available publicly right now. There are like they've talked about other sizes. I've used other sizes. I have access to other sizes, but like it's not a publicly available thing. So that's coming, but like it's not something, and I'd prefer to just like go with whatever is available publicly. The other thing is this isn't necessarily just for code spaces. Like you can, this is just the generic dev container config which is what code spaces consumes. Docker themselves have begun adopting it as well. So this also just serves as a dev image that you can deploy anywhere, basically.
Yeah, if you can basically clone that image, pull it down, and that's got to be way faster than building the thing on a small image. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, you can also shove it in a VM and connect to it and have a lot more cores and RAM than your computer.
Yeah.
So,
okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so yeah, if you can try to non-debug and report back, because that would be cool.
I'm building it now, so we'll see.
You may need to, like, because of what, I guess if you start from scratch and building it, then yes, just from what Bradley mentioned is that deleting things doesn't necessarily help, but yeah, if you're starting from a fresh Docker file, that's not an issue, so okay.
Yep.
That is good. So the next two things we did have on the issue was a technical deep dive on documentation, and then the growing and maintain the level of contribution in the future. In the future, we'd also, last time we talked about the different technical areas and like how we should move forward, and we agreed on, so maybe I was just hoping actually we could spend a little bit of time on the summit, just in terms of thinking of planning and stuff. So let me find the minutes from last time. Pull request, that's probably it, right? So I think we agreed to do the summit on planning summit. Okay, we agreed. We agreed last time, suitable types for end user and single executable applications. Let's just, oops, paste for me. So I'm trying to say, let's look at the calendar and figure out when we think might be a good time. Like November, is there any particular time in November that we think is good or bad?
Not later in the month is probably the answer. You're not going to want to go after the first half of the month.
So how about like the 18th?
No.
What day does US Thanksgiving fall on?
That's a good point, yeah.
November 25th. I would say if you could do earlier than the 18th, I would, but if that is the latest I would do it.
Okay. I guess the thing is, otherwise, how many weeks are we out? We are one. The 18th would give 3 weeks notice. The 11th would give 2 weeks notice. Do you think that's enough, or?
Let's go with the 18th in that case.
Okay.
I thought it would be 4.
Yeah, that's okay. So let's target the 18th. And I think last time we did, what time? Let me look up the mini summit from last time.
Last time it was 4 hours.
Right, I was just figuring over which times is the, pulling that up.
Yeah, it was 4 p.m. French time, so I think it was 10 to 2 for you.
Yep. And I think that makes sense. That still makes sense, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so next 10. Summit, I'm just going to put it in the calendar as we speak. Add a Google. I'll add something to, actually here, I'm going to add the same. I think there's any reason to use a different Zoom, is there? No way.
No.
So I'm going to grab the Zoom from this meeting. Copy. Description. Sorry, I'm just doing this as we talk so that we actually have it all ready to go. Where, okay, I need to go back. And I should put it not on my calendar, but on the Node calendar. Okay, and I don't see any other meetings really conflicting with that, which is good. Okay, so that's good. So planned, okay, planning for Saturday, okay. Target November 18th, 10 to EST, Eastern time. I guess in terms of sort of FYI to people, you know, I guess I can put it on the TSC agenda. How else we want to make sure people are aware it's happening. Any other thoughts on that front of things we can do that will help? We all make sure we tell people that.
We could post on the collaborators discussion just to bring some of those folks in.
Right, so is that like create a new discussion that says, hey, this is happening? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least
Sort of like
sorry,
a-
I didn't mean to speak for you, Beth. I don't know if I spoke for you there. That was my assumption. Sorry.
You said the same thing, it's fine. Yep.
So that's, yeah, instead of like an app mention that does, I think you're right, it's like opening an issue or something. So that's good. Okay. We'll do that. I guess then, anything else we should talk about the planning for the summit on those two topics? I guess it would be, can we get I guess we could do a tweet. Like, so I'm just thinking, like, for example, the suitable types for end users, we probably want to invite people beyond just the collaborators, right? Because like if we could get people from the types team, that would be useful, I think. So I don't know, Tierney, do you know anybody in Microsoft that you could invite on that front?
I could. Yeah. I can see if they're interested, if they have time.
It's like for me, you know, valuable input is like, leave things alone. Everything is great. You know, we like the way things are working, or no, you know, the types aren't as good as they could be because of X, right? Or something, right? Okay. Should we do a tweet from the Node account as a general interest, or do we want to keep it more like just through the collaborators in terms of scope?
I mean, so if we tweet it, we'll get a few people. Like, it's not going to be like, 70 people showing up. It's going to be like a little bit of extra input, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay, so we should do a Node.js tweet. Okay.
Can I just say it looks like Joe is recording like a home video? Like there's a level of grain over Joe's camera that it looks like it's like a home video from like 2006 or 2004. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
It looks.
And interestingly, I'm in a hotel, so
okay.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so that we'll do a few things to make sure we get, because yeah, I that's what I'm thinking too. We're not going to get a huge number of people, and the extra input's good. So okay, so we'll do that. Those are all good things. Anything else that makes sense? If not, okay. So the other two things we did have on the agenda, although we kind of agreed we'd like, mini summits may be the better way to get the deep dives. We did start to talk last time in terms of documentation. Let me just pull up the minutes to remind myself. Pull requests, minutes. Okay. Right, so we did talk about the Electron tools. Right, okay, so you were gonna, Tierney, I see the action was you were gonna put together an issue in the next 10 repo with the proposal, right?
Yep.
Paste that without formatting. Next step is next. Step is.
Can I get a link to the doc, the Google Doc? Sorry, I have too many things going on.
Which one, the minutes or the?
The minutes, yeah.
Yeah, the minutes for here. So yeah,
Thank you.
there you go.
Did you DM that to someone?
Yeah, it's okay. It always goes to the last person.
I hate that Zoom does that. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's like, there you go. Should be
Thank
everybody
you.
this time. Right, so I had an action, which is to open an issue, discuss how critical next steps, which I didn't do. So I think those are still the next two steps on that one. So I don't think necessarily it's worth spending time on that one. Does anybody got any other comments before we kind of move on? Not okay. I think the next one is maybe worth spending a little bit of time just discussing. We've got some of the technical things covered under the mini summit planning. This one is like a deep dive on maintaining growing level of contribution. I don't think we can necessarily cover the deep dive, but it might be worth spending a little bit of time like we did on docs in terms of, are there some things we should be thinking about in terms of that. The pre-built binaries is already one of those things. I guess, do we have a list of like, maybe just what are the people's challenges? So maybe we say like challenges in contributing. So what would we put as a list of challenges that we think there are out there in terms of growing that collaborator base and contributing?
I mean, I think one of the problems that Node has is it's assumed, and so nobody really thinks about investing in it anymore. And that makes it a challenge to attract people.
Right. And are you thinking individual wise or company wise?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Like you just install Node and then you move on. There's not like a thing to go do.
Yeah, it's certainly like some of the challenges I guess one that comes to mind to me is like, it's not a drive-by thing, right? Like, it requires a longer term, requires sustained contribution over time, right?
Yep.
And even just to take some sustained effort to get to the point where you can make a contribution, right? I'm not sure we can change that, right? Like that's
not in
core.
core.
Tell me otherwise. Like, go ahead.
Not in core. Like in other places you can, like Node Core Utils even, or website or whatever. Like the not, and this isn't just a Node thing. Like every major project has this. Kubernetes has this. Electron has this. The core thing is you're a core person, or like there's nothing easy left to do, and that's just how it ends up working.
Right. So actually, we think there's kind of like two types of contributions. contributions. Here, maybe, I don't know if it makes sense for me to share everybody's probably in the minutes, so maybe that's okay. Like there's kind of like helping to keep things like there's the fixing, scratching an itch / solving personal problem. And then there's like longer term moving the platform forward is because I'm just thinking like if we think about it like there's, hey, I've got a problem, can I fix it for myself, right? And that helps everybody, right? Like, hey, I'm reading the docs, oh, the docs were confusing, I can fix that. Or I ran into this technical problem, can I fix that?
I mean,
and in that,
sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, even in the I can fix that in docs, docs are kind of impenetrable. Like, you have to get core set up, and like that's a very high barrier to making a docs change. And so there's even things like that of like challenges in the project that we could do to reduce the barrier to drive-by contributions.
Right. So those are, yeah. So like, I guess I'm thinking like the container thing you're working on is like a natural because it would address that too, right?
Kind of. You still have to run like make tests and stuff, which isn't really like, if I'm just a JavaScript developer trying to do a JavaScript thing and I find a JavaScript bug in JavaScript docs, spinning up a container and like having to run make test is still a higher barrier. Like, it is a higher barrier than is necessary, I think, is what I'd say.
Right. So I guess it's and there's two kind of things. Like if you want to get a commit in, then I don't think we can necessarily change that too much, but like we could think of other ways that say like, hey, if you want to report a doc issue, here's another way to do that.
Right. I mean, there's ways we could address the doc stuff. Like if we split docs out and then just automated pulling them in, like that would be a way to kind of do that. But I also don't want to get too prescriptive.
I'm just thinking like the different kinds of problems because like, yeah, it's and what makes sense in terms of like bringing, value and also addressing what people want to get out of it, right? Like if it's strictly, hey, I want to report a doc issue, and we had an easy way to report those, and then somebody else could actually go and apply those. And
I think one of the things in that is that like there's some like, I don't know, business stuff around this, but like you're kind of adding a lot of barriers to, like, the person probably knows if they recognize it's a problem, they probably recognize how to fix it if it's a JavaScript problem, or there's like a decently good chance, and getting them to do that and lowering every single barrier possible is the ideal situation, because then you get them to kind of get involved and do the work, and reduce the load on the people who are already maintaining it. I'm also being prescriptive, and I will stop doing that.
Yeah, it's kind of like what's a low enough barrier? Because like,
I mean, I think you can always lower it, right?
I'll put it this way: like when I try and build V8, the barrier was like way harder, at least in my mind, to building Node, which I'm usually successful by just git clone, make, and it works, right? Like I don't know how to make that too much easier, is kind of where I'm coming from. Now I do understand that still does have a lot of context, and like I already have a Linux machine, I already have all that set up. But if you it's a huge step to try and remove some of that. And that's why I was thinking of like alternatives, like if it's that setting up technical infrastructure is going to be a challenge, but you still want to have somebody say, well, yeah, here's this doc, it could be fixed. Although the people reading the doc are probably a bit technical too, right? So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know
mean,
the right
it's
answer there. It's
like
interesting.
the with anything in the space, you can always make it easier, and it's at what point is it good enough?
Yeah.
Like you could split it, you could split out docs into like a Node.js / docs or documentation, and then automatically pull that into core and just have them like have work on docs be done there, or I guess split it between the two depending on if we don't want to change core workflows. Yeah. And then like basically make it so you can just like run npm run test or whatever yarn test in that docs repo, and it'll take care of everything for you. And like you could even go to the path of like installing make or whatever, like I don't know, getting everything set up if we really wanted to stick with make. And like there's a bunch of things you can do, and it's just deciding what the thresholds are for how easy it should be. Or not should like, be how much in effort you're willing to invest. That's
would that be different than git clone make doc?
I would say yes, because like I'm not gonna lie, the average JavaScript developer is not familiar with make, and it's a big scary thing that is like a Linux thing. That I've heard that often. So yes, but I mean, like also like I don't even know if I have make type of a situation. Like when I used to be contributing, I didn't really know what make was or how to get it, or if I had it, which I think you have it by default in any Linux, almost any Linux environment. But like I don't know what -c means and like stuff like that. So it's small barriers that add up to preventing people from contributing, which is that's fine. Like if it's a trade-off, right? And there will always be some trade-offs.
Yeah. And then so just thinking like you got the two types, you got the scratching the itch, solving the personal problem, and then moving the platform forward, and getting contributors on that second one is probably even like one is about maybe lowering the, making it easier for people to do something once. The other one is like, how do we attract people to continually and contribute over time, right?
Yeah.
And that's one where we should probably, that's probably more of a deep dive on its own too. But I don't know if other people have thoughts who are here in terms of, what are the key things like that we can at least start thinking about in terms of the growing the level of contribution or maintaining it as we move forward. I mean, part of the challenge I see is like for the sustained contribution is it's hard to do that as a hobby.
Yeah.
So how do we get support for doing that kind of stuff across, like you said, Tierney, everybody just expects, it's there, it works.
Yeah, and I mean, I maintain that if we want to rally that kind of thing, we have to go to like corporate leadership, basically have boilerplated things for corporate leadership. I brought this up in other contexts. I think it was CNC or CPC stuff. Having context and like having TSC members being available to go and talk to people in leadership in companies, and those who are in companies already who are enabling them, having leveraging those relationships. It's all just social and networking stuff that has to be done to at this point how Node works. I think that's how you have to do it.
Right. So it's kind of, it's an interesting, we need the business side contacts, whereas a lot of the people in our, like we have the technical contacts, right? Versus the business contacts.
And I think we also almost all have avenues to that to some extent, right? Like I can reach out to people. Like I know people in my role that I can ask to connect me, and I'm sure someone at Red Hat in y'all's group could do the same.
Yeah.
Same with IBM, same with GitHub and Google and the rest.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And for context too, this is something that Electron has also done a lot of this and has good experience with it. If that's something we would want to kind of hear from like Jacob Groundwater.
It'd be interesting, like in how successful was it, right? Like, just I because we could spend a ton of time and be exactly where we are. So
Yep.
that's just a data point of.
I mean,
I think that. So go ahead.
I've seen it be successful with a number of companies being hands-on. I mean, the other thing is companies seem to care more about their investment in Electron than they do in their investment in Node. I assume because it's a fundamental thing and they need APIs out of it, and they have like an invested interest in like, I need this from you. How do I get it from you? And the answer is make it.
Right.
And so that makes an easy discussion that includes business value of like, we want dark mode. Okay, go make dark mode in Electron. And it's like, it's a business thing. It's a feature. Whereas that's less true in Node, I think. It's not something you sell. You don't sell Node, you sell Electron.
Yeah, or well, you sell something on top of Electron.
Yeah, but it's like Electron is the product, right? Like, Slack is Electron. Like you can't have the desktop app without Electron, and so
You can't have it without Node either, though, right?
right. Well, you could. They could. I mean, there's the web version, right? So like there is, and I guess that's true for Electron, but like it's.
I just wonder if it's more. There's not enough missing. Like what the examples you came up with is like, hey, there's something missing in Electron, so we're motivated to add it. Versus like, well, Node works. It has all the functionality we really need. Yeah, we'd like other stuff, but
I think it's less the functionality that we need and more the ecosystem has papered over all of the bad parts enough that they don't care to invest in making the bad parts good.
Right. It works well enough, right? Like,
yeah.
Like when you ask people what their pain points are, there aren't huge pain points. And so people use it, and yeah.
There aren't so I wouldn't say there aren't huge pain points. I'd say there's not pain points that are significant enough to require investment, which is different than there aren't huge pain points.
It's related though, right? Like they're not pain points that are painful enough for people who would want to invest, I guess is the right there. They're obviously pain points, but it's like it's not painful enough that like, so for example, in the other case, it's like it's painful. We don't have dark mode. We don't look good compared to our competitors or something, right? Like versus like, yeah, this is makes me grumpy, but I'm not grumpy enough to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but even in that, it's the developers are grumpy versus the users are grumpy.
Right. So so in terms of the end, customer and dollars being made, right, it may not affect the end result. Yeah, got it. I think it would be, if you mentioned if we could get Jacob or whoever from the Electron team to give us some insight into what that team's done and on that front and what was successful. I'd be interested in hearing that anyway.
Okay.
How about everybody else? Is that something that's interesting? I see Joe nodding at least.
Yep.
Paris got thumbs up. John, okay. So yeah, if you could set that up, that might be an interesting sort of next step, because it's like, my take is like in terms of getting getting people to contribute to move the platform forward. I guess our question would be like, is it that challenge that's bigger, or the technical things that holds people back, like the getting support to do it as part of your work, or is it the technical part? I'm kind of guessing that it's the support versus the technical bit. I guess the other one would be the interest, right? Like if you had support, technical wasn't an issue, then the third one is like, is it something interesting for people to get involved in? Okay, so I think that's a good next step anyway. If you can see if Jacob has any interest, we could do that. I'm thinking that's maybe good for this week. I'll spend the rest of the time getting the issue together for the mini summit. We can kind of kick off that communication. Is there anything else people would want to talk about this week? Okay, sounds good. Talk to everybody later.